conditions. So I don't really know how to resolve this conundrum because we have never had this situation in the past. I'm going to take a screenshot for myself, and then what I'm going to do is relaunch the poll and see if one of these three might win. So please vote again. I'm sorry, as I'm answering your questions. So let me go back. Let's start with the Q&A. Okay, so as always, TrickStop is offering a coupon for everyone. If you're interested in joining, you have a $60 discount if you join in the next week. So the coupon is webinar 60. So let's go. So could you please put those book titles in the chat? I'm not sure which book titles you mean, but if you want to, okay, let me do it like this. I'm going to type some books that have to do with this topic. So there is a book on neuroplasticity. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. Although I don't think if you put a gun to my head, I could tell you who the author is because I forgot. If you want to learn how MBSR works, then a book to check out is Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Let me put that one by Jon Kabat-Zinn, or wherever you go, there you are. Go, there you are. The same author. What other books have I mentioned? If you think of anything else, I will add it to the list. So for now, I will put just these two. Is it a maladaptive coping skill? Well, that's a very complicated question that you're asking. We can say that it's not a healthy coping skill for sure, because you're damaging your hair, and not to mention the effect it has on, on our mental health. But it is a coping skill that works. Otherwise, you wouldn't be using it as a coping skill. I don't see a lot of, yeah, we can say that it's maladaptive for the reasons that I just described. But I think a more important thing is that it actually does work. So that's the part that we should focus on. It's very easy for us to sort of demonize a problem because it is a problem, right? Especially when it lasts for a long time. It's terribly frustrating, but then we'll lose sight of the fact that it obviously does something well, or at least better than anything else that we have. So in that sense, it is a functional coping skill. That's the difficult part. So that's what I have to say on that subject. Because if you want to change, the focus has to be on what pulling does well. Not because you're supposed to start liking pulling, but because that's one way to replace it with something else. I don't hear any noise, you're clear. Oh, that's very nice, because I guess the microphone filters it out, because it's almost like there's a truck that's just kind of passing by the street just to annoy me. Can you give a few examples of what some new patterns could reduce or eliminate pulling? Thank you. Okay, so one thing that I listed there are competing responses, which are habits that you introduce to apply when the urge to pull arises. Like it can be something as simple as, I don't know, like a fidget toy, for example. But specifically, what kind of a competing response will work for you depends on what kind of release or self-soothing you need. So I often find that, for example, some people like sitting on their hands, whereas other people cannot stand this. Like if you feel the urge to pull, you just sort of sit on your hands until the urge goes away. So that would be one thing. But then you have to practice sitting on your hands all the time, if you remember, because the idea is to reinforce a specific set of connections in your brain. But then other people cannot stand it because they have different needs. So if you have a lot of energy in your fingers, that's how sometimes people describe the urge to me, then what a good competing response would be is perhaps to use something more dynamic, like a stress ball, or well, one thing that I always have with me is an infinity cube. I bought this once just for fun to see if it's a competing response that I could recommend to someone, and then I ended up really enjoying playing with it. So I just keep it on my table. So that would be something if you feel the need to move your hands. For someone else, it might be, let's say, stretching. For someone, it could be a breathing exercise. So it really depends on what your typical immediate experience is before you pull. At other times, you might implement some, let's say, mind techniques, in the sense cognitive diffusion from acceptance and commitment therapy. There are like dozens and dozens of ways to do that. So that's something that doesn't require any external object. If the sensory aspect of touching and the feel of specific hairs, like the coarse hairs, if that's what gives you the gratification, then you need to focus on that specific aspect and find another habit that will be as close to that as possible. So that would be one way. But then you can go one step up and introduce more comprehensive ways. So if stress is your overall biggest trigger, then obviously other associated patterns have to be changed, which is what is it that leads to stress, if stress is what causes pulling. So that might require, I don't know, like different daily habits, saying no to some things at work, reducing the number of hours that you work, and so on. So it can be also these adjacent patterns that need changing. If you want to kind of have a good starting point, just download our app. It's free, like you don't really need to join or anything to use it. And the app will give you, if you use the app regularly, after a while, it will give you good statistics. So you will know where to start with competing responses. And also, I believe we've created a habit reversal training program for free. So it's something you can download and then use. I think it might be active. If not, subscribe to our list and you will find out when it becomes active. So it will be like a month-long program that you can do on your own if you feel like it. Or even better, just find someone else and then do it together. This was fantastic. Well, thank you so much. You mentioned them early on. One was about religion. Oh, you mean the William James books? Of course, yes. So the Varieties of Religious Experience. So this book is really fascinating. I often have, I don't know why, karma, I guess. I often have religious clients in therapy of different kinds of religions. And in the beginning, other than to sort of respect people's beliefs, I didn't know that it can be helpful for whatever we're working on. But then after reading that book, I actually learned, like, I don't know, like he gave me this way of thinking about different religious, both experiences and beliefs. And he basically told me where they are and what they do in the human psyche. So I learned how I can sometimes use these ideas and kind of draw on the power that spirituality has for individuals to help them change and heal. So it was really very useful for me. And then the other one was Essays in Radical Empiricism. And I mentioned Principles of Psychology as well, but that one has 2 volumes and it's rather big. So arm yourself with some patience. Although of all the pragmatist philosophers, William James is the easiest one to read. He is a true pleasure to read. Another one of his books that's very good, it's called Pluralistic Universe. And then there's an introductory book to pragmatism. It's called A New Name for Some Old Ways of Thinking. As you can see, I'm a giant nerd, old ways of thinking. William James, especially when it comes to pragmatism, I've read a lot of it. So, okay, so the brain that, oh, here's someone adding information. The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Deutsch, MD. Yeah, that would be, that's the one. That's quite an interesting book about neuroplasticity as well. Okay, there's a few more questions. Hello, Vladimir. I'm still amazed by the amount of information shared during these webinars. Well, thank you, but I think you should all thank everyone who votes because you choose the topics. So I had Trick for more than 20 years now. I'm 33. I can still pull, not pull for days, mostly when I'm far away from my usual routine and places. When I travel and go for holidays somewhere. I'm 3 weeks pull free. Congratulations. After coming back from my holidays and the urges are back, How can I manage them? I'm also more tempted to pull when I'm tired. Why is the temptation harder to ignore when one is tired, and what to do then? So yeah, this is a common experience that people will pull more when they're tired. It's simply because you really, it's kind of like you run out of energy to ignore what's happening in your body. That's essentially why it's harder to resist when you're tired, because things just float out to the surface. The trouble with that is when you're tired, it's very difficult to use competing responses. So that would be a good time to use stimulus control techniques. So that would be anything that you can apply so that you minimize the urge to pull or to prevent yourself physically from pulling. So these can be different things. Like if you pull in the bathroom, just cover the mirrors or turn off the lights or avoid the bathroom when you're tired. Or it could be wearing specific finger covers or band-aids. Fake nails actually work for a lot of people. I don't always advise them to clients because I think it's also a matter of aesthetics. And so, it's not everyone's cup of tea. But that would be good when you're tired, because then you're physically prevented from doing it. And also when you're tired, you're less likely to want to remove all your fake nails to pull. So that's a good idea when you're tired. When you come back, this is very interesting because usually people pull more when their routine shifts and changes. But for you, it seems to be the other way around. Like when you go back to your everyday routine, you're more challenged to pull. So in that case, I would maybe investigate what is it about my routine that actually provokes pulling and then change it. If I'm guessing it could have something to do with stress, because if you go on vacation or for holidays, you don't usually think about work and stuff like this. But try to reorganize your everyday life in a way, for example, to avoid being extremely tired in certain situations, or so that you pay more attention to how. So we all have different ways in which our, let's say, energy fluctuates during the day. So there will be times when you have more energy to work, and then time when you have less so. For example, I've noticed when I was younger, I used to mock my parents for sleeping in the afternoon because I thought it was just something old people do. And then about a year ago, I caught myself becoming extremely sleepy around 2 p.m. It's not even my lunchtime. I eat lunch very early, but for whatever reason, between 2 and 3 p.m., I'm nearly useless. So what I do is I organize my work day so that at that time when I'm useless, I actually do something else. And then I realized that whereas I'm useless for work, I can read a book or take a walk, and this feels quite good. So if you implement these little things that kind of follow your energy levels throughout the day, you will minimize any temptation to pull, a lot of the temptation to pull. So that's something that you can try doing. But either way, congratulations for being pull free for such a long time. 3 weeks without pulling at all, that's a really big deal. So this seems like a good place to stop, since I don't see that there are any new questions. So I'd like to, let me see the polls and see what is it that our topic will be before. If we have a tie again, no tie. Okay. No, there is a tie. Why do you people hate me? Okay, so it's a tie between self-image and hair pulling and personal boundaries, limitations, and hair pulling. I'll try and find a way to merge these together, because self-image and boundaries can have something to do with the other. So next time we'll talk about a kind of hybrid of the two. I will try to illustrate it with enough clinical examples so that you get all of the topics that you've selected. So someone said, can we send you emails to talk to you? Well, if you have a question, you can send me an email for sure. Just give me a few days to respond, because usually I receive a lot of emails to the extent that my spam folder has gone completely insane and now puts my parents and clients in there. So, but I will respond to your email if you're right, sure. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And thank you. There are a lot of very nice words that I didn't read because at a certain point, I feel uncomfortable reading compliments to myself out loud. And so that will be it for this evening. I will see you in September, I hope. And have a pleasant evening. Goodbye.